It was the last day of junior year, and the air felt heavy with that mix of freedom and restlessness that always hits when school's about to let out. Rain hammered the town all morning, turning the streets into slick, gray mirrors. Everyone had been buzzing about hitting the beach to celebrate, but the storm killed that plan dead. I wasn't ready to let the day slip away, though. Not after months cooped up in classrooms, counting down to summer. My friends felt the same. We stood under the school's awning at lunch, kicking around ideas, when someone brought up the old elementary school on the edge of town. It'd been abandoned for years, locked up and left to rot, with rumors it'd be torn down by winter. Breaking in sounded stupid, reckless even, but the thrill of it hooked me. I pictured us sneaking through those empty halls, owning the place for a few hours. What could go wrong on a rainy day like this? No one would be around to catch us. Still, as we piled into a friend's beat-up sedan, my stomach churned, not just from excitement, but from a flicker of doubt I couldn't shake. The school sat tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, half hidden by overgrown bushes and sagging trees. We parked in the back lot, shielded by the building's crumbling walls and the tangle of nature reclaiming it. No lights, no cars, just the rain drumming on the roof of the car. One of the guys grabbed a baseball bat from the trunk, grinning like this was some grand adventure. I forced a laugh, but my hands were sweaty, slipping on my phone as I clutched it. He swung at a window, and the glass shattered with a sharp crack that made me flinch. My heart thudded. Someone had to have heard that, right? But the rain swallowed the sound, and no lights flicked on in the houses nearby. One by one, we climbed through, my sneakers crunching on broken shards. Inside, it smelled like damp wood and forgotten things. The classroom we landed in still had desks shoved against the walls, faded drawings pinned up like ghosts of kids who'd long moved on. I told myself this was fine. The place was getting demolished anyway. But standing there, staring at those empty seats, I felt like we'd stepped somewhere we didn't belong. We flicked on our phone flashlights, beams cutting through the gloom as we moved deeper into the school. The halls stretched out, lined with lockers rusted shut, and floors coated in dust so thick it puffed up under our wet shoes. Every squeak echoed, loud and clumsy. We weren't sneaking anywhere. Thunder rumbled outside, shaking the walls, and I tried to focus on the rush of being here, not the tightness creeping up my chest. Each room we poked into was a time capsule. Chalkboards with half-erased lessons, chairs stacked haphazardly, a creepy stillness that made me wonder what this place used to be like when it was alive. I wanted to laugh it off, act like this was just dumb fun, but my mind kept drifting. What if someone saw us pull up? What if we weren't alone? I pushed it down, trailing the group as we turned a corner. Then I glanced back, just a quick look, and froze. Something poked out from a doorway down the hall. A shape, vague and dark, like a shoulder or an arm. My breath caught, and I whispered for the others to look. We swung our lights toward it, and whatever it was slipped back into the room, gone in a blink. Did you see that? I hissed, my voice cracking. The others nodded, eyes wide, and for a second we just stood there, lights trembling in our hands. My brain scrambled. Maybe it was a trick of the shadows or a stray animal stuck inside. But deep down, I knew better. That wasn't nothing. Before anyone could argue, another sound hit us, faint but closer, like something dragging across the floor. Panic surged, hot and sharp, and we bolted down the next hallway, shoes slapping the tiles. My legs moved on autopilot, but my head was screaming, "Get out! Get out now!" We ducked into the first room we found, a kindergarten class, all tiny chairs and faded alphabet posters. We shut the door, killed our lights, and crouched in the dark, breathing hard. Rain lashed the windows and lightning flashed, throwing jagged shadows across the walls. I pressed my back against a desk, heart pounding so loud I swore it'd give us away. Who could be here? The place was locked up tight, power long cut. A janitor? A squatter? My imagination spun darker. Maybe someone had been watching us the whole time, waiting for us to split up. We stayed quiet, listening, the storm outside masking our shaky breaths. I kept telling myself we'd overreacted until the door clicked. No warning, no footsteps, just that soft, deliberate sound. It creaked open, slow as death, revealing the pitch-black hallway beyond. My chest locked up, air stuck in my throat. Then, inch by inch, a head leaned through the frame. Lightning flashed, and I saw it, eyes glinting, staring right at us, unblinking and hollow. No expression, no movement, just a face that didn't belong. I choked out an apology, stammering that we'd leave, but it didn't budge. One of the guys shoved past me, fumbling with a window, his hands shaking so bad he could barely slide it open. I couldn't move, couldn't look away from that thing, person, whatever it was, standing there like a statue. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't listen. I hated myself for coming here, for thinking this was some game. He got the window up, crawled out, and the others followed, yelling at me to move. I snapped out of it, glancing back one last time. It was still there, watching. I threw myself through the window, landing hard in the mud, rain soaking me instantly. My knees scraped the ground, but I didn't care. I just ran, slipping and stumbling toward the car. The others were ahead, already piling in, the engine roaring to life as I yanked the door open and dove inside. We peeled out, tires spinning on wet gravel, and I twisted around, half expecting to see that figure chasing us. Nothing. Just the school fading into the storm, dark and silent like it never happened. My clothes clung to me, cold and heavy, but the chill in my bones wasn't from the rain. No one spoke. We just drove, the wipers slashing back and forth, my mind replaying that face, those eyes, over and over. I wanted to ask if they'd seen it too, if it was real, but my voice wouldn't come. Part of me hoped it was a worker, someone pissed we'd broken in. But the way it stood there, so still, so wrong, it didn't feel human. We got home, split up, and never talked about it again. Not really. The school came down a few months later, bulldozed into a flat patch of dirt that's a park now. No one caught us, no cops showed up at our doors. Life moved on, but it didn't feel over. I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder, especially on rainy days, expecting to see that face in a crowd or peering through a window. I stopped going anywhere abandoned. No old houses, no empty lots. The thrill wasn't worth it anymore. My friends brushed it off, said it was probably some creep living there. But I saw their faces that night. They were scared too. I keep wondering who or what it was. Did it know we'd come? Was it waiting for us, or just anyone dumb enough to walk in? I don't sleep well when it storms now. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear footsteps outside my room, slow and steady like they're sizing me up. I tell myself it's nothing, just the house settling. But I don't believe it. Not after that day. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray, dreary day that drags on forever in a small-town Oregon high school. I was slouched in my algebra class, the teacher's voice droning on about equations I'd never use. My head felt heavy, eyes half closed, fighting off a yawn. I just wanted out of the stuffy room, away from the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. So I raised my hand, mumbled something about needing the bathroom, and slipped out before anyone could care. The hallway stretched out in front of me, long and empty, the kind you see in every American school. Lockers on one side, chipped tiles underfoot. I liked it out here. It was quiet, a break from the monotony. My sneakers squeaked against the floor as I walked, hands shoved in my hoodie pockets. I didn't think twice about it, just another trip down the hall. But something felt off. The air was cooler than it should have been, and the silence pressed down harder than usual. I brushed it off, told myself I was just bored, restless. The bathroom was at the far end of the hall, tucked around a corner where the lights always seemed dimmer. I kept walking, my shadow stretching out ahead of me, warping against the lockers. Halfway there, I felt it, a prickling on the back of my neck like someone was staring at me. I stopped, turned around quick. Nothing. Just the empty hall, the faint hum of the lights. "Get a grip," I muttered under my breath, shaking my head. Probably just too many late-night horror streams messing with me. I started moving again, faster this time, my steps echoing a little too loud. The air got colder the closer I got to the bathroom, and I swore I heard something. A faint rustle, like fabric brushing against the wall. I glanced back again. Still nothing. My heart gave a little thud, but I forced it down. It's just a bathroom, I told myself. What's the worst that could happen? I pushed open the bathroom door, a heavy, peeling green thing that groaned on its hinges, and stepped inside. The smell hit me first, damp, musty, like wet concrete after rain. The mirror above the sink was fogged up, my reflection blurry and distorted. I picked the farthest stall, slid the lock shut, and sat there, trying to shake that weird feeling still clinging to me. The stall was cramped, walls scratched with old graffiti, names, dumb jokes, a faded pentagram someone probably thought was edgy. I leaned back, staring at the door, letting my mind wander. That's when I heard it. A faint scratching, like fingernails dragging slow across metal. My breath caught. I held it, listening hard. There it was again. Scritch, scritch, steady, deliberate, right on the other side of the stall door. My stomach flipped. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice weaker than I wanted it to be. No answer. Just that sound, over and over, like someone or something was testing the surface. I bent down quick, peering under the gap. No feet, no shadow. The bathroom was dead empty, just me and that damn noise. Sweat beaded on my forehead, cold and sticky. Maybe it's a rat, I thought, or the pipes acting up. But it didn't stop. It got louder, closer, like whatever it was knew I was listening. My hands gripped my knees, knuckles white. I couldn't move, couldn't think straight. All I could do was sit there, trapped, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. I wanted to bolt, but my legs felt like lead. My mind raced. Maybe it's a prank, some jerk from class messing with me. But the emptiness under the door, the way the sound seemed to press against it, that wasn't a prank. That was something else. I was still hunched over, staring at the floor, when a new sound snapped me upright. A sharp crack, like plaster splitting. It came from above. My head jerked up, eyes darting to the ceiling. There were cracks up there, jagged lines I'd never noticed before, spiderwebbing across the tiles. Then I saw it. A hole, small but deep, right over my stall. And in that hole, a face. Pale, hairless, no expression. Just two hollow eyes locked on me, unblinking, like they'd been watching me the whole time. My chest seized up, a scream stuck in my throat. It wasn't human, not really. No nose, no mouth, just those eyes, black and endless, boring into me. I stumbled back, slamming against the stall wall, my hands scrabbling at the door. I couldn't look away. Those eyes held me, pinned me there, like they were pulling me in. My heart hammered so hard I thought it'd burst. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking bad, and yanked it out of my pocket. The flash went off as I snapped a picture, bright light bouncing off that thing's waxy skin, before I finally kicked the door open and ran. I didn't stop, didn't look back. My sneakers pounded the tiles, slipping as I rounded the corner, heading straight for the janitor's office. That face, it burned into my skull, every detail sharper than it should have been. I could still feel it watching me, even as I ran. I burst into the janitor's office, panting, my phone clutched like a lifeline. The old guy behind the desk looked up, frowning as I shoved the screen in his face. "Look at this! There's something up there!" I stammered, my voice cracking. He squinted at the photo, grainy, shaky, but you could see it, that blank, eyeless stare glaring down. He didn't say much, just grunted and leaned back in his chair. "Kids have been hearing stuff in there for years," he said, voice low. "Scratching, whispers. Some say it's a ghost. Others figure it's just some creep hiding out." He shrugged, like it was no big deal. But I saw his hands tremble as he handed the phone back. I sank into a chair, staring at the picture. Someone cleaned it up later, sharpened the edges, cut the noise. But it didn't help. Those eyes stayed the same, haunting, like they were still tracking me. People at school laughed it off, called me crazy. A few whispered about weird noises they'd heard too, but no one went near that bathroom after. Me, I never went back. Not to that stall, not even that hall. Every night since I'd lie awake, seeing it, those eyes waiting up there in the dark. And sometimes when it's quiet, I swear I hear it again, that faint, slow scratching calling me back. You have experienced a different life, a phenomenon that you cannot explain. Why? If so, share your story in the comments section below, because someone out there has also experienced the same thing. Don't be afraid to like the video, subscribe to the channel, because the next story could be even more interesting. Share your story. It was July 15, 1976, and the sun was beating down on the dusty roads of Chowchilla, California. I'd been driving the school bus for years, long enough to know every curve, every bump, every kid's name. That afternoon, I had 26 of them on board, a rowdy bunch fresh from a summer trip to the fairground swimming pool. Their voices filled the air, a chaotic mix of laughter and half-sung songs, their wet hair still dripping onto the seats. I didn't mind the noise. It was part of the job. I'm not much for words myself, just a rancher with rough hands and a steady grip on the wheel, but those kids trusted me. Always had. I liked that about them, how they'd pile on without a second thought, knowing I'd get them home safe. That day felt no different at first. Just another run under the blazing summer sky. But as I turned onto Avenue 21, something shifted in my gut. A faint itch, like the air was too still. I brushed it off, probably just the heat playing tricks on me. The road stretched out ahead, flanked by dry fields baking under the sun. Then I saw it. A white Dodge van parked dead center, its door swung wide open. No one around, just an empty shell blocking my path. The kids quieted down a bit, some leaning forward to peek out the windshield, murmuring to each other. I squinted, trying to figure it out. Maybe a breakdown, I told myself, easing off the gas to weave around it. My hands tightened on the wheel, not out of fear, not yet, just instinct. I'd seen stranger things on these roads. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like a shadow moving where it shouldn't. Then he stepped out. A guy in overalls, face hidden behind pantyhose stretched tight, a revolver glinting in his hand. My heart lurched, but I kept my face still. He walked right up to my window and said, "Calm as you please, would you open the door?" Like he was asking for directions. I didn't want to, but that gun wasn't asking, it was telling. I slid the door open and two more figures jumped in, same getup, one with a rifle now pointed at my chest. "Everybody to the back," the gunman barked, and the kids scrambled, some whimpering, some too stunned to make a sound. I wanted to turn around, to tell them it'd be okay, but that barrel kept me frozen. The third guy took the wheel, and we rolled forward, the white van tailing us. The bus went quiet, too quiet. No screams, no cries, just the hum of the engine and the shallow breaths of 26 terrified kids. I could feel their eyes on me, begging me to do something, anything. But what could I do? My hands were empty, my mind racing. We drove maybe a mile, then stopped in a thicket of bamboo near the river. They'd planned this. Every move smooth, every second calculated. My stomach churned as I realized I'd missed the signs. I should have known, should have turned back. Now we were theirs. They split us up like cattle. Half the kids shoved into the white van, me and the rest into a green one waiting nearby. No windows, just a metal box with a partition blocking the driver. The doors slammed shut, and we were swallowed by darkness. 11 hours stretched out ahead, 11 hours of pitch black, the heat pressing in like a vice. Sweat soaked my shirt, my throat burned, but I couldn't let them see me crack. The kids huddled close, some sobbing quietly, others clutching each other. The older ones started singing, soft, shaky tunes like "If You're Happy and You Know It," trying to keep the little ones calm. I wanted to join in, to give them something to hold on to, but my voice wouldn't come. All I could think was, what's next? What do they want with us? The air grew thick, heavy with fear and the stench of sweat. I kept telling myself I'd find a way out. I had to. For them. The van stopped after what felt like forever. Middle of the night, 100 miles from home. The doors swung open, and two figures stood there, silhouetted against the faint moonlight. They handed me a flashlight, told me to strip, then pointed to a ladder leading down a hole. I went first, legs trembling but head high, not wanting the kids to see me falter. One by one, they followed. Their names called out like a roll call for the damned, each stripped bare before climbing down. We ended up in a pit, a moving van buried 12 feet underground, walls rusted, air stale. 2 hoses poked through as air shafts, a few mattresses scattered on the floor, some bread and peanut butter tossed in like scraps for dogs. Then they slid a steel plate over the top, and the thump started, dirt piling on, sealing us in. Panic hit hard. The little ones screamed, pounding on the walls, while I stood there, flashlight shaking in my hand. The ceiling creaked, and I pictured it caving in, crushing us all. I couldn't breathe right. Partly the air, partly the weight of knowing I'd let this happen. I had to keep them calm, had to keep myself together, but God, it felt like we were already dead. 12 hours in, the food was gone. The air shafts quit working, and the July heat seeped in, turning the van into an oven. The roof sagged lower, groaning under the dirt. The kids were fading, eyes glassy, voices hoarse. I couldn't let it end like this. With the oldest boy, a lanky kid with more guts than I expected, we stacked the mattresses, climbed up, and pushed at the steel plate. It wouldn't budge, weighted down by something heavy. Later, I'd learn it was 2 industrial batteries, 100 pounds each. My arms burned, my lungs screamed, but I kept going, clawing at the edges with a piece of wood. I thought of their parents, waiting back home, and it hit me. If I stopped, we'd never get out. After hours of sweat and splinters and prayers I didn't know I had in me, the plate gave. We shoved the batteries aside, dug through the dirt, and broke free. When I climbed out, the cool night air hit my face, and I nearly collapsed. 16 hours down there, and we'd made it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed them, even as they stumbled out behind me. We staggered to a guard shack at the quarry, and soon the cops were there, lights flashing, voices barking questions. The kids got food, blankets, a ride home. Me? I just sat there, staring at my hands, still caked with dirt. They caught the bastards eventually. 3 of them, rich kids turned monsters, after ransom money. They buried us alive for $5 million. Years later, they walked free, and that burned worse than the heat down in that hole. People called me a hero, said I saved those kids, but I didn't feel it. I felt the weight of every second I couldn't stop it, every cry I couldn't hush. I went back to driving, back to the ranch, but it was never the same. I'd look at the road ahead and wonder, could it happen again? Could I protect them next time? I died years later, in 2012, they tell me. But that day, in '76, part of me stayed buried in that van, trapped with the echoes of their voices, the thump of dirt, and the question I'll never answer. What if I hadn't gotten us out? It was my first week at this sprawling state university, a place known for its wild parties and endless nights. The air still buzzed with the chaos of move-in day, and I was just starting to find my footing. My roommate, this eager guy with big frat dreams, wouldn't stop talking about Rush Week. He begged me to tag along to some party that Thursday night, not because I cared about joining a fraternity, but because he didn't want to show up alone. I didn't mind. I figured it'd be a chance to see what college life was really about, maybe even meet a few people. So I said yes, shrugging off the little twist in my gut that told me to stay in my dorm and unpack instead. The house was miles from campus, tucked away in a rundown part of town I'd never have wandered into on my own. It was one of those streets where the streetlights flickered like they were about to die, and the air smelled faintly of mildew and exhaust. When we pulled up, I couldn't believe this was the place. The house looked like it was one storm away from collapsing, peeling paint, cracked windows, a sagging porch. If it weren't for the thumping bass spilling out and the cars crammed along the curb, I'd have thought it was abandoned. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the chipped wood. Something about it felt off, but I pushed it down. It's just a party. I told myself, what's the worst that could happen? We knocked, and the door swung open fast. Too fast. A stocky guy stood there, his white t-shirt clinging to him with sweat stains spreading under his arms and across his stomach. He grinned, holding a red Solo cup, and motioned us inside like we were late for something important. The living room was crammed with bodies, at least 50 guys packed into a space meant for half that number. The lights were dim, a few flickering bulbs casting long, uneven shadows over the crowd. The heat slammed into me, thick, stifling, carrying the sour stench of cheap beer and stale smoke. I scanned the room, searching for anything that felt normal, but there were barely any girls. The few I spotted looked as uncomfortable as I felt, their eyes darting like they were mapping out an escape route. I stuck close to the wall, nursing a plastic cup of watery beer that tasted more like regret than alcohol. My roommate had already disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to navigate the scene alone. I attempted small talk, awkward nods, forced chuckles, but every conversation fizzled out fast. These guys weren't like the polished frat brothers I had imagined. They were rougher, quieter, their stares lingering just a little too long. My stomach twisted. I kept telling myself it was just nerves, that I was overthinking everything. Then, a big guy lumbered over, his shadow swallowing me whole. He held out a tiny bottle, the dark liquid inside sloshing slightly. "Drink this," he said, his smirk stretching too wide. I forced a laugh, took the bottle, and downed it in one gulp just to get him off my back. His eyes stayed locked on me, like he was waiting for something. My chest tightened. "It's fine," I thought. "Just some cheap liquor. Nothing to worry about." But my hands started shaking, and the whole room felt like it was tilting. It happened fast, too fast. One moment I was standing there, the guy still looming over me, his breath hot and sour. The next, my head spun like I'd been pulled into a whirlpool. The lights smeared into streaks, voices warped into a distant hum, and my knees buckled. I don't remember hitting the floor, just darkness, thick, heavy, swallowing me whole. When I came to, I was somewhere else. My cheek was pressed against a damp mattress, the stench of mold and sweat choking the air. The room was pitch black, except for a faint sliver of light creeping under a door. The music still pounded, muffled, like it was buried beneath concrete. I tried to sit up, but my body felt like lead, every muscle screaming at me to stay down. Then I heard it, a rustle, sharp and sudden from the corner of the room. My eyes darted toward a cracked closet door, barely visible in the gloom. A soft crunch, like someone stepping on plastic, sliced through the haze in my skull. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to call out, but my throat was dry, my voice trapped. I stared at that door, waiting, hoping I was imagining things. But I felt it, eyes on me, cold, unblinking, watching from the darkness. Panic clawed its way up my spine. I didn't know how I got here, how long I'd been out. All I knew was that I had to get out. I forced myself up, legs trembling, and lunged for the door, my hands fumbling at the knob. Every second stretched unbearably, like whatever was in that closet was creeping closer, reaching for me. I yanked the door open and ran, the stairs groaning under my weight as I shoved through the crowd, desperate. I found my roommate, grabbed him, and dragged him outside into the night, my breath coming in ragged, gasping bursts. We made it back to campus, the car ride a blur of silence and flickering streetlights. I told him everything, how that guy handed me something, how I blacked out, how I woke up to that sound in the dark. My voice trembled as the words spilled out, like they had been trapped inside me for too long. He wanted to call the cops, his phone already in his hand, but I stopped him. What would I even say? That I drank something stupid and panicked? That I heard a noise? There was no proof, no bruises, nothing missing. My clothes were still on, my body untouched, but the dread sat heavy in my gut. I'd only been out for 10 minutes, maybe less. Whatever was in that bottle, it hadn't hit me full force. I should have felt lucky, but I didn't. Back in my dorm, sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying it. The guy's smirk, the way he watched me drink, the rustle from that closet. Was someone actually there, waiting for me to stay down? Or was it all in my head, some twisted trick of my drugged-up mind? I checked the locks twice, pulled the blinds tight, but none of it helped. Every creak in the building made me flinch. Every shadow looked like that cracked door. That house is still out there, rotting on the edge of town. I never went back, never asked about it, but I can't shake the questions. What if I hadn't woken up? What if I had stayed just a little longer? And that sound, God, that sound. It follows me, slipping into the quiet moments, a whisper from the dark, a reminder of something I'll never understand, something that might still be waiting for someone else to stumble in. You have experienced a different life, a phenomenon that you cannot explain. Why? If so, share your story in the comments section below, because someone out there has also experienced the same thing. Don't be afraid to like the video, subscribe to the channel, because the next story could be even more interesting. Share your story.